I'm Matt ONeill, former U.S. Secret Service Deputy Special Agent in charge of cyber operations. In this series, I go inside the fight against cybercrime, hearing directly from the defenders in government, infrastructure, and enterprise who are racing to stay ahead, because cybercrime isn't slowing down, and neither can we. Welcome to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. Welcome, everybody, back to Detonation Point, presented by Elastio. This week, I have a recurring guest, our first one, Stephen Dougherty, who's going to join us today and chat about a whole bunch of different things, to include the Eagles-Packers at the very end of this podcast, because Stephen nailed it 2 weeks ago. Eagles were on a bye last week, but he absolutely nailed that pick. So I'm dying to get his thoughts on some of the moves that the Eagles made over the last week, and then also the outlook for the Packers-Eagles coming up this weekend. But before we get into that, what I really want to focus on is two things. One, the government shutdown, day 36, as we're recording this on Friday. And then two, there's a lot of false information, or I should say ignorance, and not in a pejorative term, about how federal investigations are worked. And I say that in light of some of the recent DOJ firings of special agents, 1811s. So if you're an active or former 1811, this is hopefully for you, because I'm sick and tired of seeing this nonsense in which agents are summarily fired. That's not a word, I know, but you know what I mean. Public school education, shout out Hilton High School. So anyway, so we're going to go into that. So Stephen, let's start off in the very basics. For a federal agent to open up a case, what is the standard to your knowledge? Like, can they just open up a case because they want to?
Negative. No, they cannot. It generally starts with, first off, having proper information to get a case started. So you have to present even within internally to your own team. Is this, the juice worth the squeeze? Is the manpower there? That has to be all written up and put together in sort of a well-prepared, almost I would call it like a pitch deck to leadership to say, hey, is this going to be a viable case? So you have your direct supervisor who has to look at that, decide, yeah, okay, or now this may be a little bit more. We have to go talk to, the ASAC first, and then let's talk to the ASAC, and then he goes, oh, let's just run it past the SAC first to make sure. So there's a lot of steps, even just getting it off the ground, getting that case number.
So, and there are specific terminology and standards that are used in Department of Justice guidance to open up a case. And what they'll say is it's called reasonable indication. So is there specific articulable facts suggesting that a federal crime may have been, or is being, or will be committed? So you have to show that there is some reason why you want to investigate whatever the matter is. And then to go on top of that, so my background, Stephen's background, is white collar fraud. So when we're talking about white collar fraud, that is wire fraud, mail fraud, bank fraud, tax fraud, insurance fraud, computer fraud, whatever.
Don't forget the 1956 money laundering.
Money laundering. Yep. So that is where we come from. But there are also sensitive investigative matters. And when you have a sensitive investigative matter, that requires immediate approval and concurrence from the Department of Justice, whether it's the Public Integrity Section, the Election Crimes Branch, National Security Division. You're not opening up a case until it goes through them and goes through your own internal, probably chief counsel. That's not what we do, right? So the idea that a federal agent is going to just open up a case on his own, or even if it's just internal to their agency, without engaging with the Department of Justice, is just not how it's done.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to open up a case, at least the Secret Service policy was, when you open up a case, you send a letter to the Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office, in the district in which you are, informing them, we have opened up a case on X, Y, and Z, and you provide essentially a paragraph or two outlining the articulable facts as to why you have a reasonable indication that a crime is committed.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk a little bit about what you could do without the Department of Justice, meaning DOJ. But when I say that, I really mean the U.S. Attorney's Office, federal prosecutors. What can you do? I can do a surveillance. I can interview people. I can do an interrogation. I can do a trash pull.
Mm-hmm.
Those are things all I can do.
Yeah.
Trash pull for the old timers like me.
Maybe a mail cover if we can get postal.
You could do a mail cover. Yep, you could do that if you had reason to believe that there's mail fraud that's being committed. But your investigative sort of opportunities are somewhat limited to those sorts of matters. Interviews, surveillance, trash pulls, mail covers, things like that. Okay, fine. But can you arrest somebody?
That's negative. No, unless there's immediate probable cause.
So you could do a PC arrest, but if you do a PC arrest, you have to have an initial appearance within, or a preliminary hearing within, I think it's 24 hours. So if you arrest somebody on a Thursday night, by Friday morning, they're in front of a judge. And then there's a specific amount of time to have a preliminary hearing, or they have to indict. My recollection is a little fuzzy on this, but I think it's like within 10 days or a week or something like that. So can an agent arrest somebody just because they want to and hold them? The answer is no, they cannot. So can an agent send a grand jury subpoena?
Not without DOJ.
You could argue in some instances you can do an administrative subpoena.
We've had that argument before. I remember. I
Yes.
wanted to do it, and you're like,
Yes.
no,
Well,
we're not going down that road.
Not for white collar fraud cases on a certain sort, as it has to be exigent, and it has to be on the protective intelligence side of the house. For the Secret Service, very limited. Now, when you go over to DOJ and the FBI, they have national security letters, they have other sorts of things. But generally speaking, the agent, the line agent, 1811, for those of you who don't know, when I say 1811, that's a special agent. That's just there's a four digit code for every job series. 1811 is special agents. There's 1801s, 1805s, 132s, but 1810s, but 1811 is a special agent. And I'm focusing on that because I'm seeing special agents continuing to get fired, and it pisses me off because, one, I don't know if there's any due process or not. Two, it is completely misguided in my opinion, because what the agent can actually do and not do is dictated by the U.S. Attorney's Office, by the Department of Justice. So as a case agent, I would need to go to the Department of Justice, U.S. Attorney's Office, for grand jury subpoenas. What about search warrants? I have to go through them, right?
That needs to be signed by a judge.
Correct.
I've been in judges' chambers at 10 o'clock at night trying to get a search warrant, and he's, not happy with us, and we're just like, we need this now. We're trying to seize these funds that are victim funds, and it's a search and seizure warrant. It's a process.
Yes, and you have to have probable cause. You have to have the standard probable cause.
And generally, we always had way more probable cause than we probably needed. But we would be, we would have 98 to 99% of everything we needed before we got that search warrant.
What about a D order?
Similar. I mean, a little less of a standard, but still, you need that 2703, all that info as to why we need that info.
It's a court order. The only thing you don't need to do, so a court order meaning it's signed by a judge, is you could do an F letter, which is a preservation request. So you could do a preservation request as an agent or an analyst, and as long as it has the language of required, and you send it to, so typically we'd send them to an ISP, a registrar, a hosting provider, something like that, to say, hey, there's an open investigation into this account. Please don't delete any data. But it doesn't mean you get the data. It just means that they're holding it.
And so you have to continue to do it for a certain amount of period. I think depending on the
30 days.
Yeah, 30 days, 90 days, or 120 days.
Yeah, I can't remember.
With all, how cumbersome these investigations get, we have had issues where preservation request was not renewed and things kind of went missing. Also, when you're filling out those preservation requests, a lot of times it's an online form now. So, you can drop in a ton of info, but it's like throwing things into a black hole sometimes where you're like, was that really responded to? And then we have to keep following up to get that information that it was, in fact, preserved.
Yeah. And so, but that doesn't, again, just to be clear, that does not mean you get access to the data. That just means when you follow up with legal process, there will be data there so the bad actor can't delete it and destroy it or whatnot. So you can't obviously do a Title III without a judge. So, and you don't go to a judge without the U.S. Attorney's Office. So it's not like an enterprising rogue agent is going to draft off an affidavit for a search warrant and then go to a magistrate without DOJ.
Yeah,
They're there every
as
step
much
of
as
the
you
way.
want to.
Yeah, no, but they're there every step of the way, and in many instances, I've written affidavits where, the prosecutors politely said, "This is from, public school education. We need to make this a lot
Oh, yeah.
better." So, anyway, so it is one of those things where it is something that is required nearly every step of the way for a case. Let's talk about arrests. If you're going to do an arrest, it typically in the federal system requires somebody to be indicted. I could get a criminal complaint,
Yeah, or an
but let's start with
information, but
yeah. Well, so let's start with an indictment. Who's running the show inside the grand jury room?
that's the prosecutor, that's the AUSA.
Correct. So agents or analysts are just witnesses.
Mhm.
So can an agent could an agent could lie. Unfortunately, that's happened from time to time, but can an agent indict somebody without DOJ? Okay. So that requires a grand jury, true bill, all that stuff. You guys know that. So that is off the table. An agent can't do that. So what are we firing people for? The next piece: can an agent do a criminal complaint and get it signed by a judge? Yes or no?
Negative.
No. No, you can't. You can't. You need DOJ. The other thing is a criminal complaint still requires an indictment. The only true charging documents are an information or an indictment, I and I's.
Mhm.
So we covered that. So typically, the reason why you would do a criminal complaint for an arrest is if you don't have time to go in front of a grand jury and you need the person to be arrested. So,
Yes.
say for example, I had cases where I had a guy that was a Belarusian that was an identity thief, and we knew he was going to go to the airport. We could have
Mhm.
done a PC arrest, but we had enough time that we did an affidavit for a criminal complaint. We arrested him, but then it still goes through the process. You have to have a preliminary hearing, or you have to have an indictment. You have to get him indicted. No step at any time can a federal agency do that without DOJ ever.
Yep,
Correct?
100%.
Okay. And an information is is something that would happen is if you're arrest somebody, you're cooperating with the person or the person is cooperating,
Mhm.
and you don't have to indict them. They plead guilty to an information. So that's a whole other side, but those are the two charging documents or two charging vehicles, I guess you could say, is an indictment or an information. And in both instances, you need DOJ.
Yes.
Right. Okay. So if you're saying, well, these agents looked at this event, say January 6th, for example. Okay. So the standard to open up a case, two things. Standard to open up a case is there reasonable indication that a crime may have been committed? Okay. Nobody can look at that video and say that there's not indication that a crime might have been committed. I mean, unless you're Looney Tunes, clearly something is worth looking into. The next piece is, would that require somebody from Department of Justice, Public Integrity Section, Public Corruption Section to look into it? What do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah,
For sure.
yes, without a doubt. So firing agents that worked on cases that were lawfully opened and they're doing their jobs, in which their jobs are to bring facts together supporting a federal prosecution that is led by, and I hate to admit it, but my cases were not ever led by me. They were led by my awesome federal prosecutors, not by me. So I couldn't say, hey, awesome AUSA, you know who you are up in New Hampshire, now retired with your horses.
There's a
I,
few out there that
I,
we can thank
yeah,
for.
oh yeah, there's plenty. There's plenty. But I couldn't say, "Hey, I want you to charge them with X, Y, and Z." No, that's their job. My job is to bring facts forward to them so they make the prosecutorial decisions. Nor was my job to ever worry or care about whether somebody was uh, sentenced to X amount of time. The job was, do we bring forward an investigation that could lead to a conviction? And a conviction would be proof beyond a reasonable doubt.
We're
So
investigators. It's to
that's
uncover
it.
the information and put it in an orderly report no matter what the information says.
Yes. So these propeller head pinheads that are firing these agents without appears to be any due process is very problematic for me because they have to know that everything that they did along the way was under the purview of the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Yep. And think about the ramifications of that, right? That's where a lot of our trust came from, was knowing that we had the purview of the U.S. Attorney's Office to do our jobs. If you start questioning that or taking that away, you're going to lose the impetus for agents, for investigators to want to do their jobs because they're now afraid of the implications of doing said job.
It is a chilling effect. It
Mm-hmm.
is a chilling
Getting
effect.
killed right now.
And who's
My
going to
beard
want to
is
work those
standing up.
cases? Yes. Who's going to want to work these cases if, and again, imagine what's going to happen in the next election cycle if there's a turn and who's in control of the House and Senate, right? There's going to be investigations. There's going to be all this stuff. Man, you do not, like, people act like they're living in a vacuum, that there's not consequences downstream. And
Exactly.
so and what bothers me is for the 25 years I was an agent, I never saw any politicalization, any sort of like rogue agents. Man, agents are good people. They've committed their lives to supporting and defending the Constitution of the United States, and to have them be fired, or it creates less trust in the public, and it's misplaced, because nothing that line level, and I'm not talking about senior executives, like, I set that aside. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about these guys that were at a lower level, that were doing their jobs, investigating crimes in which there was reasonable indication that a crime may have been committed. That's it. That's the
That's it.
standard.
Yeah.
That's it. It's not probable cause. Is it reasonable? Do I reasonably believe that a crime may have been committed? And so I'm really concerned about the downstream consequences. Do you think I'm overreacting?
I wouldn't say you're overreacting at all. My just quick vision of the downstream consequences I've mentioned, you're taking away the motivation of agents to do their job because they are losing that trust in the system that's developed. Further along, just any politicization of federal investigations is a dangerous, slippery slope, as we know. If we don't study our history, we're bound to repeat it.
Yeah. So moving on from that, which again, it's just because it was in the news this week again, and you just wonder, where is this going to stop? And it is politicizing special agents at the rank and file level, that are just, you're eliminating people that were on squads. I mean, it is pure madness. And I wish more people spoke out about it, but I understand why they don't, because they're scared of whatever the consequences are. I don't know what those consequences are. It's not right. Speak up. Say it. It's not right. Period. End of discussion. Anyway, so moving on to the other thing that's occupies a lot of people's minds is, today, as we're recording, it's day 36 of the government shutdown, and it's the second check that federal employees are going to miss. What do you think that does to the families of those people that are dedicating their lives to protect this country?
During the last shutdown, a case agent partner, probably the biggest case I've worked, I still don't know if he was joking or not. He told me, I'm like, hey, how are you doing with the shutdown with your family? Because he was the sole breadwinner at the time. So it's not like his wife was working. He didn't have a sugar mama like I do. He was really kind of in dire straits. And I'm like, is everything all right? Like, he's like, yeah. He's like, I'm fine. He's like, I have a couple acres in my backyard. I've been out there shooting squirrels.
Okay.
And he looked at me deadpan. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can't tell if you're joking or not, because I know
Yeah.
you well enough to know that you might not be joking. And
Yeah.
can you imagine that feeling? You know,
Yeah.
doing one of the hardest jobs in the world, right? And he was in a field office, so he wasn't like me, who had, the luxury of being in CID and the JIOC, where we had kind of everything we needed at the time. He was in a field office, so he was getting pulled for protection all the time. He was standing post. He was gone, and then not getting paid on top of that. I couldn't imagine.
No, it's really difficult. And as we said on the previous podcast, most employees live paycheck to paycheck, because you're living in high cost areas. It is, most people, as they get on in their career, have families and kids and are supporting, multiple people. And then for this to happen again, we have not learned our lesson. How do you recruit people to come into this line of work? To
Uh-huh.
say, like, our own government can't get their act together, and I don't care about Republican, Democrat. Like, I've
blame both of them. I mean,
Yeah, absolutely.
honestly, like, let's be fair about it. Like, negotiation is a negotiation. Like, you just don't say, "This is my ball. I'm going to take it home," because you don't like. Come on,
Yeah.
but that's not what we're
I
here to.
use the term politicking,
Yeah, yeah.
and it applies to everybody who's there. It's an umbrella term I like to use.
I traveled to Denver over the last week. You feel bad for all the TSA workers. You feel bad for the air traffic controllers. You feel bad. I feel bad for all of the awesome analysts that I used to work with, that we used to work with, all the administrative support that we used to work with that are not getting paid, don't know when it's going to end. And you see stories about people trying to get free food and things like that. It's just what bothers me and concerns me the most is the national security impact. Because clearly, when you're worried about your family and you're worried about having money to pay for your house and your electricity, are you more vulnerable to foreign malign influence?
Yep. And I'm going to share another personal story. So during the shutdown in 2013, I believe, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was 2013. I wasn't getting paid doing what I was doing then. And so I didn't have kids at the time, luckily. But what I ended up doing to kind of make ends meet slash figure things out, I was pouring beer at a brewery for people for growler hours, that were showing
Mm,
up. And I was basically getting paid in beer, which
yeah.
whatever it
Hey,
was, but it was
yeah.
something to do. But I was out of the house at nights, right? So I wasn't around my wife. It put a strain on our relationship for sure. I mean, then you add beer into that and just not a good mix anyway. But, just something as simple as that. And now we're at a bad crux of time because we have the holidays coming up, right? And it's just such a high pressure situation for a lot of people, whether it's the travel, whether it's the missed paychecks and the ability to, now is when a lot of people, especially if you're frugal enough, you're buying your kids presents, right? People oftentimes they don't want to wait until the actual, holiday season kicks in because prices go up. So they've been trying to buy it now. And just like, what do they do? You
Mhm.
know?
Yeah, no, it's tough. I don't know if they do layaway plans anymore, but that was, remember back in the day before credit cards were a thing where you had layaway? No, it's bad. And you bring up a really good point that is often overlooked because we talk about the employees. What about all the contractors that are not getting paid? What is the downstream consequences of the contractors that aren't getting paid? In many instances, they have the same clearance and access to sensitive data that could be exploited by foreign adversaries for insider threat as anybody else, right? I mean, that is a major concern. So, because you have a vulnerability.
You say right back in the early days of the JIOC, like you treated everybody in there, contractors, analysts, agents alike. We're all agents of the government doing that. We all had the same mission, right? But you have somebody who's a contractor who's a little more tertiary, a little more on the outside. And, in terms of an insider threat, that's something that really we need to look at because you have contracts being cut, right? I just sat down with a gentleman who went from full time to part time, and he's an energy consultant for the government. And so he's losing 20% of his pay now. So it's a trickle down effect almost too in the whole ecosystem that is government and GovCon.
Well, and it's also a distraction. So even if somebody can't be influenced by, and if you don't think that outside foreign influence is not happening, you're crazy. It 100% is
Absolutely.
happening. So, but it's also a distraction. And when you have people that have jobs that we rely on to keep us safe and they're distracted unnecessarily because politicians can't get their act together, I mean, that there's going to be this Super Bowl of finger pointing if something happens, and something will happen if they don't fix this nonsense soon.
It's going to be the Spider-Man meme, all of them pointing at each other doing that.
Yeah, yeah,
And then,
more.
but you're also, one thing I want to bring up is, and I don't want to give criminals tips and hints here, but it's also another vector for
Sure.
threats. So think about it, you have a bunch of government contractors. We can easily go find the email addresses of government contractors, blast out an email with a QR code saying, hey, affected by the government shutdown, click this QR code for maybe an assistance package or see if you qualify for this offer. They click that QR code and you know what we can do with that information.
Yeah. No, it's really, really unnecessary. And my hope is by Monday this will be old news and they'll have fixed it. But
Mhm.
I don't have any confidence and faith that that's going to happen.
No, and that's another thing too.
Yeah.
I talked about the trust and confidence. I mean, worthy of trust and confidence, right? That starts with us at the base level. But is that something that we now have in our government? I would say it's probably at an all-time low right now.
I would agree. Although, we've been through it before, but hopefully The concern is the sort of like the polarization. There's no more middle ground anymore. You can't unfortunately have common sense conversations with anybody. Everyone's so dug into one side or the other. And for somebody who's non-political, I think they're all crazy. Like it's no longer about, oh, I stand for these principles. It's like, hey, I'm an Eagles fan and you're a Giants fan, so I can never agree that the Giants are ever good. Like it's just one of those things. It is identity politics, and it's very unfortunate
Yes.
because that fuels these things from taking place because nobody ever wants to feel like they lost or they gave in or
Mhm.
whatever, and it just makes the problem so much worse.
Yeah. I feel like we're almost at the pinnacle of identity politics, and the psychology behind it is just it's warping people's brains on both sides.
Yeah,
It's kind of
that's
scary to
bad.
watch.
Yeah, and of course, I'm gonna, shit on social media because I largely
Yeah.
blame them. I blame them, as any rational person would for leveraging our addiction to their algorithms in order to live in a world of confirmation bias and you
Mhm.
never seeing anything outside what you believe. It's really unfortunate.
Yeah. Really is.
Well, on to good things. Let's talk birds. Okay. So last week, or 2 weeks ago, you nailed the Eagles Giants game, even calling Jahan Dotson for a big play. So in the last 2 weeks, birds have picked up some hopefully good players on defense, right? And their offense clicked for the second week in a row. What are you thinking against the Packers? They're I think a point and a half underdogs.
Yeah. Uh, with the new guys coming in, I think there's gonna be a bit of a learning curve there. Obviously, maybe expect a big play out of one of them as kind of a standout. Maybe the new Jalen, I think, might get a sack or two. Put Jordan Love on the ground, and I feel like the pressure is going to be good. I like the name Tank Bigsby.
Okay.
So if Tank's playing, which I think he is,
Yeah.
I expect him for some. I'm just feeling him right now. So you know, Saquon's always the big target. Stuff in the box against him. So it may open up opportunities for Tank. Maybe we see a long run from him. But I'm feeling it's going to be a close, low scoring game. I think it's going to be a cold night in Green Bay as well. So I'm thinking Birds something like 21-17.
So you think they'll pull it out?
I'm the
Of
optimistic
course.
sports fan
Of
here. I
course.
got to, you know, and I want to see him pull it out, right? Because then they got Detroit coming right up.
Yeah.
So it's
At
like,
home.
this is our battle through the NFC North. We got to take one of them. And so I'm hoping that, being in national TV in the limelight, it kind of gives them a little more push. AJ Brown is back or supposedly being back would be, not a target per se. I think he's going to be still lower numbers, but he always, attracts the double team and opens up things for other players.
So one of the things about the Packers, I kind of did a little dive into their record, and you don't see any signature wins, I don't
Yeah.
think. So they're
They
five
just
two
lost to
and
the
one.
Panthers.
Well, so all right, so they did week one, they beat the Lions 27-13. Okay, that's a good win, but the Lions have struggled this year.
Yeah. And week one, nothing really counts.
Yeah, week two, they beat the Commanders, but again, that looks less and less impressive as we accurately predicted all off season.
Oh, yeah. It was brutal. It was brutal against the Seahawks. I
That was
didn't care at
awesome.
all.
That was wonderful. Although I had Sam Darnold in fantasy and they pulled him in the end of the third quarter, so I wound up losing to 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 my next door neighbor's kid. So I don't like that.
I
But
traded JSN in a spite fantasy trade, and I really kind of regretted that one.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. He's pretty good. So then they lost to the Browns. They tied the Cowboys. They beat a depleted a bad Bengals team. They beat an okay Steelers team, and then they lost 16-13 to the Panthers. So when you're looking at it, do you go, is there any signature wins? The closest, maybe the Lions week one, and then when you compare it now, right now there's more money on the Packers than the Eagles. I think it's 52 to 47%. But when you look at the Eagles record, they had some signature wins, wouldn't you say?
Hmm. And the loss to Denver, I mean, Denver has 8 wins, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So you got to give them something there. So, the outlier is that Giants game, which the Eagles came back and proved that, that was a fluke too. So
Yeah, everybody makes bogeys from time to time, and
yeah,
the Broncos game, they had a pretty big lead, and they let it slip away. They also still probably should have won the game because there was some PI calls that weren't made at the end of that game that I'm still salty about. But they have beaten the Chiefs at the Chiefs, they've beaten the Rams, and they've beaten at the Buccaneers in the Tampa. Those, and they went to Minnesota and beat the Vikings. Those are all good wins. When I do agree with you that typically when people, especially when they have three new starters come in, you're going to have some sort of growing pains. I'm the pessimist. I think they're probably going to lose 28-24 or something like that. That's how but
okay.
I'm going to predict them to lose every game moving forward for the rest of my life. So don't ever vote on me.
Well, hey, at least we
Because
can be, if they win, then you're pleasantly surprised.
yes, well, and the spread's only 1.5. So your final is what?
21-17.
Okay, 21-17 and late touchdown. Are we talking about garbage time?
No,
What are you
it's
thinking?
gonna be an Eagle style game where I think they're gonna get up early and it's gonna look good for them, and then they're just gonna the Green Bay's gonna start nipping away at the lead, and then it's gonna hit like something like, come down to something late, but that's what I'm thinking, 21-14 or 21-17,
Okay,
Eagles. So that's what I'm
okay.
thinking. Thinking the Eagles will get up early and then try to do their thing where, my
They run
favorite
the
meme
ball.
is, yeah,
Yeah,
my favorite meme is, oh, my favorite team, the Eagles are playing great. Ah, shit, 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 shit. Oh, they won.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
sorry for
Well,
the language, but that's how I feel.
please. So the other thing I was going to mention to you real quick is how sweet is it to see what happened to the Commanders? Not the Daniels injury,
I know that was,
not that. That was gross.
but
But
what are you doing? First, I always do you remember the Detmers, Coy and Ty
oh yeah,
Detmer?
yes, I remember.
Jaden Daniels reminds me of them just based on his kind of body size. And I think one of the Detmers had like a catastrophic elbow injury in a similar way where he's, kind of spindly and tackled and the elbow popped out. And at least it's not his throwing arm. That's the one thing you can kind of, I think, find solace in. But why did they have him in? I understand they wanted to get the reps and the experience, but that thing was over.
Yeah,
Get my man a
was
break.
so both Coy and Ty Detmer were Eagles quarterbacks at
Yes.
one time,
Yep.
and Coy Detmer, I think, was the Eagles quarterback when the Patriots were going on their run in 2007 and the Eagles came to to New England. I was at the game, and they fought until the fourth quarter, and they wound up losing. But Coy Detmer had. I'm doing a quick fact check on this, but
This is ancient
so
history, really, for most people.
yeah.
So the fact that
Oh,
we're
I
even
know a
talking
lot
about
of
it.
people weren't even. So it was November 2007. It was New England 31, Eagles 28. New England was 11-0, and I'm wrong. That was AJ Feely. My bad.
It's another one.
But that was a good game. That
Yeah.
was a good game because the Eagles had the lead going into the fourth quarter, and uh, they scored. The Patriots scored with 7 minutes left, and to go up 31-28. But I remember that game because the Patriots fans were nervous for the first time that season because they were 10-0. They were nervous about that. So I was wrong on that. Apologies to Coy Detmer. But I do think he was also the quarterback that would travel on the road, and the only thing he would bring is a toothbrush.
Yeah.
Eagles had a quarterback. That was him, right?
I think so. I think it was one of them.
Okay, let me fact check that too, because I could be over 2 here, and which again, my prognostication isn't great, but the internet's going to laugh at me because I'm googling Coy Detmer toothbrush, and who knows what's going to pop up here.
Oh,
But
geez.
yes, Detmer's Rhodes threads are sure to keep them in stitches. November 21st, 2007, he was the new Vikings quarterback, and he will go into the local Target. And of course, the stupid internet won't allow me to see the rest of it. But so I'm right on that one. So I'm 1 for 1 on my Coy Detmer trivia. So anything
Well,
else you
smart of
see?
him. He's got his uniform and everything. They bring that
Yeah,
already. He doesn't worry about
exactly.
that. So
Yeah,
just
just brought a
show up and
toothbrush.
go.
Yeah, that's more than my son would bring. So, anything else for this week? That any other predictions you want to make? Any games? Buccaneers, Patriots in Tampa.
Oh, I like the Bucks for that. I thought they were playing Buffalo. When
No,
the Patriots playing Buffalo? Okay,
next week.
gotcha.
This
They got
week
the Bucks.
is yeah, Bucks and
I'm
Tampa.
always gonna root for Baker, man. I'm always,
Yeah,
if there's not a more bro quarterback, man quarterback in the league, it's got
yeah,
to be Baker. Just what he's done, and then kind of the disdain he got in certain points, and you got to love his commercials. I mean,
yes.
just the personality on the guy. So I'm gonna root for Baker. And have you seen the conspiracies that Drake May is Tom Brady's clone?
Yes, I have. I have. Well, the thing about that game is this is an O'Neill family rivalry because my wife has had Patriot season tickets going back to 2002. My 14-year-old son is a diehard Buccaneers fan. And so they're already talking trash. And so it's actually my son just talking trash,
Yep. If the
which
Patriots lose, you're gonna have to buy him a tent, and you can live in your backyard.
yes, I was going to say he's not thinking this one
Yeah.
ahead. But in fairness, he liked the Buccaneers even when Jameis Winston was there, and Jameis Winston is his favorite player of all time, which is hilarious. But also, yes, he likes to eat the dubs, but he liked them before they were good. And so he liked them because he liked Pirates. And so he looked and he goes, Pirates, Buccaneers, that's my team. Not the Eagles, not the Patriots, the stinking Buccaneers.
And Tampa's a fun town. Wait till he's
Yes.
18, but Tampa could be a very fun town.
He's gonna like it for a whole bunch of other reasons.
Yeah.
So, but he also likes the Lightning, like he likes all things Tampa.
Yeah.
The Rays, which I don't know how, like in the Buccaneers, goes to these others. He's been to Tampa once
Good
anyway.
on him, though. Good on him for
So
keeping his
yeah,
sports fandom like that. I
yes,
appreciate that.
yeah, no. Well, listen, recurring guest Stephen Dougherty, I appreciate your time as always, and I can't wait to chat with you next week. After if Stephen's not on next week, it's because he blew this prediction. But I like him. He's Stephen the Irish instead of Jimmy the Greek, and so anyway, so thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it.
Yep. And thank you, listeners, for listening to Detonation Point presented by Elastio.